The daily life of a peasant in ancient Egypt was hard, repetitive, and deeply tied to the rhythm of the Nile. Most Egyptians were peasants, and their lives looked nothing like the golden images carved into temple walls. While pharaohs lived among gods, peasants lived among mud, water, and endless labor. Their survival depended on the river, the land, and forces they could not control. A peasant's day began before sunrise. As soon as the light appeared over the horizon, work started. Homes were small, built from mud brick, often consisting of just 1 or 2 rooms. Families slept on simple mats, woke together, and shared everything. Privacy did not exist. Life was communal, crowded, and noisy. Food was basic but essential. Bread and beer formed the foundation of the peasant diet. Bread was coarse, filled with grit from stone grinding, slowly wearing down teeth over a lifetime. Beer was thick and nutritious, safer to drink than water, and consumed daily by adults and children alike. Meat was rare and usually reserved for festivals. Most days, peasants ate bread, onions, lentils, and whatever vegetables they could grow. Work revolved around the Nile. When the river flooded, fields were submerged and farming paused. During this time, peasants were often forced into state labor. They hauled stone, dug canals, repaired temples, or worked on royal projects. This was not optional. The state demanded labor as a form of tax, and refusal could mean punishment or starvation. When the waters receded, the real agricultural work began. Peasants plowed the soft soil using wooden plows pulled by oxen. Seeds were scattered by hand, and animals were driven across the fields to press them into the earth. Everything depended on timing. A failed flood meant poor harvests. A poor harvest meant hunger. There was no safety net. If crops failed, peasants still owed grain taxes to the state. Tax collectors measured harvests carefully, and records were kept by scribes. If a peasant could not pay, he could be beaten, imprisoned, or forced into further labor. Survival required obedience and endurance. Clothing was simple. Most peasants wore linen loincloths or simple tunics. Shoes were rare. Many worked barefoot under the burning sun. Skin darkened, hands hardened, and bodies aged quickly. By modern standards, life expectancy was short, and physical pain was constant. Despite the hardship, peasants were deeply religious. They believed the gods controlled floods, harvests, and fate itself. Daily prayers, small offerings, and local rituals were part of life. Hope was placed not in comfort, but in balance, that the gods would allow the cycle to continue 1 more year. Children did not experience a protected childhood. From a young age, they helped in the fields, carried water, scared birds away from crops, and learned the work that would define their lives. Education was a luxury reserved for scribes and elites. For peasants, knowledge was practical and inherited through labor. As the sun set, work ended, but rest was limited. Evenings were spent repairing tools, preparing food, and sharing crowded sleeping space. Tomorrow would be the same. The cycle repeated endlessly: flood, labor, harvest, tax, survival. For the peasant, life was not about progress or ambition. It was about endurance. Each day survived was a success. And yet, without peasants, ancient Egypt could not exist. Their labor fed the cities, built the monuments, and sustained the gods themselves. As years passed, the physical toll on a peasant's body became impossible to ignore. Constant bending, lifting, and working under the sun wore people down quickly.
Backs curved, joints failed, and hands became permanently scarred. There was no real medical care for peasants. Simple remedies made from herbs or prayers to the gods were often the only treatment available. Infection, injury, or illness could end a life suddenly. Disease was everywhere.
Standing water brought mosquitoes, parasites, and fever. Poor nutrition weakened the body, making even small illnesses dangerous. Dental pain was common, caused by years of eating gritty bread. Tooth infections could spread and kill. Child mortality was high. Many children never reached adulthood, and families grew accustomed to loss. Grief was part of daily life, accepted as unavoidable. Peasants lived under constant authority. Overseers watched the fields, ensuring quotas were met. Scribes recorded every measure of grain. The written word held power, and peasants who could not read were helpless against it. If records said a man owed more than he could give, punishment followed. Beatings were legal, public, and meant to maintain order. Fear was a tool of governance. Yet peasants endured not only through fear, but through community. Villages depended on one another for survival. Families shared tools, food, and labor. In times of hardship, cooperation was the only defense against starvation. Social bonds were strong because isolation meant death. Life was harsh, but not entirely without meaning. Religion offered comfort where reality did not. Peasants trusted that if they fulfilled their duties, the gods would reward them in the afterlife. Simple graves were prepared, sometimes with small offerings or amulets. Though they could not afford tombs like the elites, peasants believed that good behavior and loyalty to the gods could still secure a place beyond death. Old age, when it came, was brief and difficult. There was no retirement. Elderly peasants worked as long as their bodies allowed. Once they could no longer contribute, they depended entirely on family. Those without support faced hunger and neglect. Death was not feared as much as uselessness. Despite everything, peasants were proud of their role in the world. They believed their labor sustained not only Egypt, but the cosmic order itself. The annual flooding of the Nile, the harvest, and the offerings to the gods were all connected. If peasants stopped working, the universe would fall into chaos. This belief gave meaning to suffering. Festivals were rare moments of relief. On holy days, work paused, food was shared, and music filled the villages. For a brief time, life felt lighter. These moments reminded peasants why they endured the rest of the year. Joy existed, but it was fragile and temporary. In the end, the daily life of a peasant in ancient Egypt was defined by repetition, hardship, and resilience. There was little hope for change, but there was purpose in survival. Their names were not carved into stone, their lives were not recorded by scribes, yet they were the foundation of one of the greatest civilizations in history. Ancient Egypt is remembered for its pyramids, temples, and gods, but none of it could exist without the peasants who rose before dawn, worked until exhaustion, and accepted their fate with quiet strength. Their lives were short, difficult, and largely forgotten. But through their labor, Egypt itself became eternal.